they start region next week. They only say region gets hard. Everybody is right now, but that's probably get it out of your system before you start region. Texas, I got a kid at Texas A&M who wants to play way he's played well. A&M was not playing well. They're supposed to be like number one.
Yeah, those are ordinances based on
That's how you know, whoever's going to the SEC championship, that's anyone that can get in. And, you know, you really, that's just. If you're out of digital. Well, they just pitch around it. Michael Harris came on pretty good at the end. I think it's gonna be one of those. In October, you know.
All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening and welcome to the City of Douglasville Planning Commission meeting. I am Francisco Artley, the chairman of the Planning Commission. The other members of the Planning Commission are Keith Burnett, the vice chair, Natalie Fegan, Nathan Zachary, Ralph Benton, and Mark Van. The staff members are Miranda Jordan, staff attorney, Dana Gray, community development director, Chelsea Tubbs, senior planner, and Camille Brown, planner one. There are a few protocol items I need to make you aware of before we start the meeting. Please listen closely on how tonight's meeting will be conducted. Keep your comments and presentation on a professional level, dealing with the facts that are important for this commission to make its decision. We will not accept comments that are considered by the chair to be a personal attack on any individual or group of individuals. You will receive a warning from the chair if you deviate from this requirement. A second deviation will result in a request for you to leave the meeting and the premises for the evening. Please refrain from any applause, comments from the audience. Only one person will be talking at a time, and all comments will be made at the podium after the speaker has been recognized by the chair. Please direct all comments to the chair and the commission, not to the audience or the staff. Please do not applaud or react to speakers, speak from the audience chair, carry on a conversation with others in the audience, or disrupt the order of this meeting in any way. Be aware that these hearings are not a debate or an opportunity to ask questions which must be answered by any individual tonight, but merely an opportunity to present information to the commission. Other than the applicant, no person may speak more than once. The applicant may reserve part of their speaking time as a rebuttal and may speak next and last and may use the entire 20 minutes allotted for the pro side of the application. Other than the applicant, no person may speak more than 5 minutes. If you have a cell phone or other electronic device, I ask that you power them off or put them on silent mode. If anyone wishes to speak tonight, please fill out a form available at the table and hand it to the staff before approaching the podium. After the case is called, we will hear next from the staff regarding any relevant information to this case. The commission members will be free to ask questions at any time before the vote on a project. Following the applicant, anyone who wishes to speak for or against the project or just ask questions will have an opportunity to do so. The city ordinance restricts each side to a maximum of 20 minutes, or time may be waived at the discretion of the presiding official. If questions are raised, we may ask the applicant to speak again. Afterward, we will call for a motion and a second and have any necessary discussion regarding the item. Then we will vote to recommend approval or denial of the application. This commission is only a recommending body. The items will be heard by the mayor and council whether we recommend approval or recommend denial. All items will be heard by the city's mayor and council at their legislative meeting on Thursday, April 3rd, and then voted upon by them at their meeting on the following Monday, April 7th. The first item on our agenda is to approve the minutes from February 4th, 2025. Is there any need for discussion? Do I have a motion?
I move we approve the minutes from the February 4th meeting.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, signify by
Aye.
saying aye. All opposed? All right, the motion passes and the minutes are approved. Is there any old business? Okay. The first case is item 25-111. Hold a public hearing and consider a request for a change in zoning from R2 Single Family Residential Detached District to R3 Single Family Residential Detached District for plus or minus 33.26 acres located at the intersection of Campbellton Street and I-20 in land lot 22, District 1, Section 5, parcel IDs 0022015C014, 0022015C015, 0022015C016, 0022015C018, 0022015C076, 0022015C077, 0022015C088, 0022015C089, and land lot 23, District 1, Section 5, parcel ID 002301500024. Application by Tradent Homes. Staff will now present the item.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Dana Grace, 6695 Church Street. As stated, this is a request to rezone R2 Single Family Residential Detached District to R3 Single Family Residential Detached District for 55 single-family homes on 33.2 acres. There are currently 9 parcels, 6 which are vacant and 3 which have existing homes. The entrance is off of Elizabeth Drive, and it also has an exit only onto Hamilton Street. This does comply with our medium density residential character area, and the applicant is present.
All right. Are there any questions from the Planning Commission? Nope. Thank you, sir. Will the applicant come forward and state their name and address for the record? Tell us what you intend to do on this property.
Good evening, I'm Joe Fowler, Post Office Box 489, Douglasville. Good to see everyone.
Excuse me, Mr. Earp, could you speak up, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Richard Parvey, the Vice President for Triton, is stuck in traffic. He's on the way. You'll recognize him when he come in because we've been here before, as you may recall. Over the years, the property at this particular location has been put under contract for several non-residential purposes. At one point, you may remember, there was a plan for a standard retail commercial use. Another time it was multifamily apartments. Another time it was mixed use with retail up front, multifamily in the back. At some point, I think even someone talked about doing industrial on this site. All that went away. And then in 2023, as was just mentioned by Dana, the city revised its comprehensive plan and the medium-density residential character area. And at this point, the city's future land use plan, it permits a slightly higher density than the R2 rezoning permits. That, of course, would be 2 homes per acre. Based on the development of the city's changing its ordinance, Triton has designed the plan that you see on the site plan identified on slide number 2. Let me see if I can put that above. There it is. I should note that this site plan has been modified a number of times over the year or so that we have been before both planning and zoning and the city council. At one point, there were going to be 83 lots. That was last August. But at this point, the plan is for an age-restricted community for those 55 and older, with pricing in the mid-400s, square footage ranging from 1,875 to 2,400 square feet. Sample elevations are, as you see now, on display in these 3 slides. As we have said, and as you recall, in order to address the traffic issues that have been mentioned by some of the neighbors in some of the meetings that we had when we met with them separately, but also before the council, you'll note that on the site plan that at Elizabeth Drive, that's at the top of the site plan where it adjoins Campbellton, no left turns will be permitted out of the subdivision going left and west onto Elizabeth Drive. I can't enlarge it, and you may be able to before you, but it's constructed in such a way that there'll be no left turns out going westbound onto Elizabeth Drive. Plus, plans that have been prepared and submitted to the county DOT and to the staff DOT anticipate 2 more lanes to be added to Elizabeth Drive for a total of 3 lanes exiting Elizabeth Drive. It's kind of hard to see on that site plan, but as drawn, there is a proposed eastbound, that is leaving Elizabeth Drive. There's a proposed dedicated left turn lane onto Campbellton toward town. There's a proposed straight lane onto Hospital Drive going toward the hospital. And there's a proposed right-only lane onto Campbellton Street going toward I-20. And then I'll also note, I was looking for a laser, but there is not one, but you will note that between lots 11 and 12, there is a right-out only lane onto Campbellton Street, which is designed to keep traffic off of Elizabeth Drive. As a part of this R3 zoning that's before you, Triton will construct these improvements as described and has been coordinated with the DOT on the technical design and materials. I will note, before I come back to the traffic in just a second, the city found in its analysis and submission that this new plan, and I'm quoting, complies with the site's medium-density residential character area, and then further that it is not expected to negatively impact the surrounding community. City found that, and I'm quoting, the request is in alignment with the medium-density residential goals. You have before you, and I'm sure you've read, the two recommendations that the staff presented, and both of those are acceptable. The first is that we would provide a minimum 20-foot wide natural undisturbed buffer along the northern and southern boundaries of the property. You see that on the plan. That's the line that runs east-west. That is, when he's speaking of its northern boundary, that's what's the discussion. And then along the southern boundary, along the entrance ramp to I-20. In addition to that, and before I go to the second portion of the staff's recommendation, I will note that Triton will provide custom fencing between the houses that lie in the area. And you see some of the sample fencing. We've shown these to everyone before, of course, you may remember seeing them, but that's the type of fencing that would be along the boundary lines between this development and the properties in the area. And then, not that it bears on the issue of fencing, but here's some type of sample monuments that Triton has been using in certain areas in the past. And then now back to the site plan. Sorry, it's taking me a second. Well, it won't get there. The second major category of staff analysis deals with certain issues regarding the traffic response now. First, there are several things that are mentioned here. The requests are as follows. Lane widening for Elizabeth Drive shall be 12 feet asphalt with thermoplastic markings. That, of course, is acceptable. Next is purchasing and installing signal head equipment based on the development's demands. That will be necessary because of the intersection of Elizabeth with Campbellton. The improvements at, the proposed lane widths of Elizabeth. No, number 3, relocating the traffic signal poles as required and determined by the city and county traffic staff. And then finally, placing a 10-foot no-access easement placed along all lots that have frontage on Campbellton Street. So all those lots that are stacked up running north and south will have no access onto Campbellton Street. As we have discussed in the past with the other designs for this project, in this case, there will be a mandatory homeowners association with the routine covenants and restrictions, sidewalks on both sides of the internal roadways in the subdivision, street lights installed throughout the subdivision. Utilities will be underground, houses will be served water and sewer by WSA. The project will comply with all the stormwater and sedimentation control requirements that are routinely imposed on all developers in the county and the city. And then finally, you'll see the open space on the left. That's roughly 10 acres. And of course, that will have in that location the mandatory stormwater pond. You can actually see that. Everything else will be green space. That's the presentation, and I'm sorry that Rick is not here yet. He's on the way. I'll try to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you,
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Are there any questions?
Mr. Fowler, I have one question. On the recommendation, was that recommendation from the DOT based on this project, or were they already planning to do a widening of Elizabeth Road?
This project.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Did you say you had meetings with the community about these plans?
Excuse me.
Did you have meetings with the community about these plans? And-
Yes, ma'am. It began in December 2023. Somewhere here, I think I'm remembering correctly. We had a couple of meetings with about 25 or so people at First Baptist Church. Then we had a follow-up meeting. There was a fair amount of opposition to the project that was originally proposed. 88 units as initially proposed. There was a different configuration. It had a much larger, it had a rec area. And what became clear was we were not going in the right direction for this site. It is a keystone corner. I grew up less than a mile from there. And it's important to the neighbors. It is an established community in that area. And so we've met with a lot of the community, but separately, we have met with individuals. Most recently, I've spoken to Danny Ballou and Mark Adams. I haven't talked to Frank except indirectly about some other matters. I've spoken with the Schaefer family. Yes, we've had meetings. At some point, we sent out about 50 letters, all to the people in that area, inviting them to the meetings. And as I indicated, 20 or so came. We followed up a little bit with some emails. But really what was first proposed by Triton was just not going to work there. Even though the city had changed its comprehensive plan to provide for what essentially is, what this is, an R3 density, it was just not going to work. There was some issue with the R5 ordinance, you may remember, because it required the alleyways in the rear. That site would not accommodate that for the obvious reasons. So we just sort of slogged through 2024 with respect to this project. And then somewhere along the way, somebody suggested active adult. I think it may have been Danny Ballou. So we went back to the drawing board, had to deal with the owner of the property because that happens with development, because expectations about yield change, purchase prices, that's part of what's been going on with respect to this.
I had one question just for my clarity. No, there was 88 units previously, and now how many units?
55.
55, okay, I thought I heard.
Yeah.
It's 55 and older.
Yes, yes, active adult, 55, yes.
Yeah.
55 lots with 55, sorry.
Are there any other questions?
What type of retail stores you say you're gonna have there?
None. Initially, this site had been on the market for ages. Well, it's never been developed since my childhood, which unfortunately is longer ago than many in this room. But signs had been up, and along the way, there was a proposal for retail, commercial retail, a host of things, none of which worked. The community spoke actively against it. So this is only housing. All right, thank you, Mr.
Any other
Chairman.
questions? or-
I just have one other question, just, again, I'm trying to restore. I know there were some discussions we had pertaining to left turns onto Elizabeth.
Yes, sir.
And I know, I guess that final answer is there will not be a left turn there. So what will be the avenue of approach for those coming off of I-20, trying to get into that
I'm
subdivision?
sorry. Out of the subdivision, there are no left-hand turns onto Elizabeth Drive. But coming back from work, they will have to turn left onto Elizabeth.
Okay, okay, I got that
And
clarity.
there were some issues raised about that because of the length of the turning lane. And what we are hoping that with this as being a senior targeted project, there will be less traffic. When there are not folks getting up and then returning, getting up and going to and returning from work, we think this being a senior targeted project will lessen that impact.
It hurts that you say senior, it's 55 and older.
It gets nothing but worse.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of the project, ask questions, or make other comments? Please come forward and tell us your name and address.
Frank Wynn, 8925 Orchard Drive, Douglasville. And like Joe, I've been around that property my whole life also, although that's still a few years less than him, I think. But I live in my grandparents' location. That's where I visited as a kid, and so that's my familiarity with it. And then I moved in back in the 90s after they had passed away. This area is currently zoned R2, and one of the things that I think that I disagree with on the recommendation from the people that have looked at it is consistent. Consistent is a very broad word, though. It is not, if you want to use consistent in a different way, I've looked at Highway Fairburn Road to Rose Avenue, south of Highway 78, north of I-20, and I can only find 2 streets that have the R3 zoning for this type of housing, and probably those houses are not valued as much as the project Joe's talking about. I'm pretty sure the houses they're talking about selling would be more than what those other houses are sold for. One of them is over in the Mill Village, one of the streets is in the Mill Village, the other one is off of, I believe it's Country Club Drive. So first of all, it's not really consistent with the zoning in the downtown area. Most of the housing areas are zoned R2, and this is zoned R2. And what Joe has said, this really has come a long ways. It was totally I think, out of what it should be for that area. But as one of the ladies that has spoken several times before, it's still not the same character as the rest of the area. And I presented to the city some photographs that I went and took in Cobb County of Trayton homes. And what you didn't see from Joe's photographs is these homes are very, very close together. That's one characteristic that you don't see a lot of in the city, especially homes of this size. It gets looking pretty crowded. So I think the character is not there, even if you say it meets the consistency of what the long-term plan is. Another thing that I think is very critical, and it goes to what Mr. Benton a little bit was asking, they cannot turn left out of the lower exit. And you can't, if I understood what Joe was saying, and I don't know if this has changed much from the last one I looked at. I couldn't pull up anything when I looked at y'all's website the other day. But the left-hand turn issue on Elizabeth is a different matter. That intersection, they can go left, right, straight, any direction. If you're on Campbellton, they can go left, right, straight, anything. The problem is, people, when I pull out, and I see this on a regular basis, and when I pull into Elizabeth Drive, if I'm going to my house, regularly cars make U-turns. And I've started asking myself why, and have looked and have paid a lot of attention. People exit on I-20 going west and take Campbellton north so that they can go make a U-turn because there's such a crowd on the curved exit that goes south on Campbellton. So this is not going to help that type of backlog. I mean, it does create a problem, but that's not the only reason people turn. I see people come across I-20 and they see traffic entering I-20, and they're crossing I-20 on Campbellton going north. They go to my entrance at Elizabeth Drive and make a U-turn. It interferes with the traffic, first of all. And there are times, my time up?
Yeah, yes, about 1 minute.
Okay. So I think that's something, and the fact that the DOT for the county and the city have looked at it, there's never been a traffic study. It's not mandated by the rules, but I think under the circumstances of these two intersections they're proposing, it's crazy not to require one. And you know, I think that's a major problem. I have other ideas, but I'll save them for the city, I guess. Thank
Okay,
you.
sir, so are you in favor or not in favor?
Oh, I'm against it. I think they've
Okay.
come a long ways,
Okay.
and some of nobody that I know of in the community is in favor of it, but I think they all would agree with some of what Joe was saying. It's better than it was to start with. It's
Okay.
way better.
Thank you.
But I don't see a reason to reduce it from raise it from R2 to R3. R2, it would only be a minimum, a few more houses that they would lose, and it would make the character a whole lot more appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this project, ask questions, or make other comments? Please come forward, tell us your name and address. Is there anyone who would like to speak other than in favor of this project? Please come forward and tell us your name and address. Okay. Is there any need for further discussion? Do I have a motion regarding this application?
I make a motion to approve the application.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor of this motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
All right, the motion passes and the application is recommended for approval and will be heard by the city's mayor and council at their legislative meeting on Thursday, April 3rd, and then voted upon by them at their meeting on the following Monday, April 7th. Thank you, sir. The second case is item 25-109. Hold a public hearing and consider a request for a change in zoning from PUD Planned Unit Development to PUD Planned Unit Development for plus or minus 10.21 acres located in the intersection of Stewart Mill Road and West Stewart Mill in Land Lot 11, District 1, Section 5, parcel ID 001101502222. Application by Stewart Mill Holdings, LLC. Jeff Matthews. Staff will now present the item.
Yes, Dana Gray again. This petition came before you in July for rezoning from PRD to PUD, which you approved. The applicant is now requesting an amendment to the previously approved PUD to request a reduce to the front perimeter building setback from 25 foot to 15 foot. Douglas County DOT requested 10-foot additional right-of-way along the frontage of West Stewart Mill Road and Stewart Mill Road. They have also revised their site plan and added 2 additional townhomes. So they went from 91 units to 93. 86 of those are townhomes and 7 are single-family homes, and the applicant is present.
What did you say?
Could you repeat the changes in
Yeah.
numbers, please?
Oh, so they are requesting a reduction from the front perimeter building setback, 25 foot to 15 feet.
On which road?
On the frontage of West Stewart Mill Road and Stewart Mill Road.
Okay, and then there was a reduction in
An additional 2, yes,
2 townhomes,
yes,
and the total number?
is now 93. Well, 86 townhomes, 7 single-family homes, totaling 93 units.
So no changes to the single-family homes?
No.
All right. Are there any other questions?
Mr. Gray, I have a question about that. So the setback change is due to the right-of-way, the 10-foot of right-of-way. So actually, the structures would still be in the same place?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Okay. All right, will the applicant come forward and state their name and address for the record? Tell us what you intend to do on this property.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the commission. Thanks for hearing our request tonight. I'm Brian Howell with HRC Engineers, and address is 6554 Church Street, Douglasville, Georgia. And I'm representing Stewart Mill Holdings LLC. So tonight, like Dana said, we're requesting to amend our current PUD for this development. And like he also mentioned, in July, we went in for an application for rezoning and annexation into the city. And we were approved. We rezoned the PUD. And I can give you just a quick overview, a refresher on the concept plan. So we have 86 townhomes, 7 single-family detached units with associated private drives, utilities, all the structure. We've got a central park gathering area. These will be rear entry units. So the rear entry will be basically facing this central gathering space in the center of the development. We've got stormwater management features and pedestrian infrastructure throughout the development. So basically where we are currently with this development process is we've submitted construction documents for the first submittal to WSA, Douglas County DOT, and the City of Douglasville. We've received first submittal comments, and Douglas County DOT, so a couple of their comments are the reason that we're coming in for these requests today. So the first one being, they requested that I guess it was a demand, I guess, to provide 10 feet of right-of-way along Stewart Mill and West Stewart Mill, which is essentially 50 feet from the center line of both Stewart Mill and West Stewart Mill interior to our property. We currently have 40 feet from the center line of both roads to our existing property line or right-of-way line. So it's 10 feet on either side of those frontages. So what this does, we believe that this, significantly impacts this layout that we've all agreed upon through this rezoning annexation process. What it does is it brings that front building setback line along both frontages in 10 feet, which squeezes the property. And one of the main things that we, like about this development is that central park gathering area that we feel like, that's the heart of this development. It's an area where people, there's pedestrian infrastructure throughout the development, but this is where, we've got units that are basically fronting this area. It's going to be landscaped, a passive park type area. And if this, if we had to use those 25-foot setbacks off this new right-of-way line and everything pushes, it's basically, it's going to be a big impact on that area. It's going to take 20 feet out of it, and at that point, it's just a strip of lawn, basically. So we're trying to protect the integrity of this development, and that's why we're requesting to reduce the perimeter setback from 25 feet to 15 feet. And with doing that, we would, basically be able to leave all the perimeter buildings in the same location they currently are. And that central gathering area would be like, it would be basically like we all planned for it to be. So that's one reason we're coming back, or that is the reason we're coming back in for this request. But another thing I'd like to bring up, and the reason for, or another change to the site plan. So another comment from DCDOT was we had a right-in, right-out off of Stewart Mill that was going to be a secondary entrance to this development. We received a comment from DCDOT that this will just not be allowed, period. So we therefore removed it and added 2 townhome units because it was basically right in the area where all of our other townhomes were. So we added 2 additional units there. So I can flip through and kind of give you an idea. So since we're kind of early on in this process as well, these are just some renderings that give you an idea of what the townhomes could look like and what the single-family detached would look like. But, you know, we'll meet all the City of Douglasville facade and architectural requirements. But these are basically just to give you an idea. But basically, you know, that concludes the presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Are there any questions from the board?
Yeah,
Okay.
a couple of questions. How are you doing tonight?
Good, how are you?
All right, I'm looking at the diagram here. It looks like initially, it says roughly 38 feet to the right-of-way mark point from the center line, I'm assuming, correct?
Correct, in existing conditions.
And now they're asking for an additional 10 feet, so that pushes you to 48, 50 feet.
Correct.
So now you're gonna have to move the units back, or is there enough room to leave them where they are and still meet that requirement?
We would have to move the units
You're gonna have
back.
to
Yeah,
move,
if we, yes. we-
Okay,
they
I
would-
needed that clarity.
And it's not really, it's not only the perimeter units, then everything, then everything condenses and.
So, yeah, so you're just gonna shift everything over, you're not, so you can maintain that Central Park?
Correct.
Sort of,
The idea would be we would just change that building setback line and the concept would stay the same as it was originally approved.
All right. I was curious about where the two units came in, but you cleared that.
Right.
So you wouldn't have that dead space.
Exactly.
In there, got it.
Right there where that, right in, right out.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question for staff because I'm confused by staff comments. Because, and maybe I'm just confused by this whole thing, because your request is not in accordance with what the Department of Transportation, what their request. So you're asking to reduce it from to 15 from 25?
Well, what we would still be, we would still give them the right-of-way that they're requesting, but instead of the building setback being 25 feet from their proposed right-of-way, we would request that this building setback be changed to 15 feet from the new proposed right-of-way.
Okay. And the reason why I'm asking, because what you said is that the amendment to this previously approved site plan would allow the applicant to be compliant with the request, but it won't.
If I said that, it's mistakenly, I don't recall saying that, but it's basically the request to reduce from the 25 to 15 so that they do not have to move any of the units, which will create every other unit to move in, and he would lose all that amenity area. So he is compliant, because he has to be compliant with that extra 10-foot right-of-way, but in able to keep the buildings where they are, he has to have a reduction in the setback.
So he's not compliant.
To,
The request is because he wants to reduce it.
oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, because the
So if-
language you're using is very confusing.
Right, so if he left it the way it was, correct, the right-of-way would be into the property. So therefore, if he keeps the buildings where they are, he has to ask for a reduction of what is required, which is the 25-foot, but down to 15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I said that in a weird way.
Are there any other questions from the board?
Again, because that one, now that statement kind of threw me a little bit, just for clarity. Well, I understand the distances are changing,
Yes,
right? So they're asking for more right-of-way. They got it.
yes.
So that would put them too close to the structure. Or are we adjusting the setback so that you don't have to move the structures? So instead of it being 25 feet, it's 15 feet,
Correct.
And then all of the structures can remain at whatever, markings that surveyed, those will remain the same. You'll just have a shorter distance
For the
of your
building.
requirement to meet setback.
That's correct.
Okay,
That-
now I'm
yeah,
good.
Yeah.
All right.
Basically, the only thing we're requesting to change on this site plan is the building setback line,
Setback line,
And- yeah.
then adding to you.
and then adding 2 units. Correct.
But their request is not in line with what the DOT requests.
Right, in order to meet that, they'll have to come back to us and say, we told you 25, but we needed to be 15 so that we can meet DOT requirements and still be in compliance with you. We have correct information with you, so, yeah, I get what's.
Okay.
Yeah, so 15 feet setback is still within the if we would have originally, it's a minimum we would have probably, it's within the code that we could have a 15-foot. We just didn't request it the first time.
Right.
And also, so we are gonna give DOT that right away. We're meeting their demands, but we just need to change our building setback so that we don't have to move the buildings. If we didn't change the building setback, then we would have to move the buildings. We'd still have to give them their right of way, so we would still be meeting their demands.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this project, ask questions, make other comments? Please come forward and tell us your name and address.
Phil Schaefer, 9064 Myrtle Drive, Douglasville. I'm retired now, but as the former zoning administrator for the county, as well as the city for a while, we saw this property when it came through a few years ago for rezoning as a planned unit development for retirement homes, 111 units. And one of the things that we found on this, and I didn't know, I hadn't had a chance to ask Brian, there was a chance that there were grave sites on this property. And that was part of what hung up the folks who were doing the retirement community. They didn't want to invest in the archaeological remains study that needed to be done, and I didn't know if you all had come across any of that in surveying the site. The other piece of this, of course, and I would be in favor of this because this is part of the annexation that the county can't object to because it's in an island surrounded by city, so you all are good there. But the PUD, when you adopt a PUD, that's the law. So what you're asked tonight to review is the changes to your code. This PUD adoption has a law in it. Yet that's the rules that they have to live by. So in order for them to change anything, they have to come back to the city council and ask for a change to the plat or a change to any of the conditions of approval, and that becomes their law, and that's what they'll have to live by. So you're right, it doesn't comply with the original, but you're being asked to change that original law, so it will comply. The other thing I would ask about, I know our DOT at the county, they're going to demand a 10-foot no-access easement around the outside edges as well. I don't know if they've talked to you about that, but yeah, that's one of the, and that's why you get the extra 2 units out of it, because they don't need that extra entry point. But that, I would just, as a cautionary tale, I didn't know if you all had done any archaeological study, because that was one of the things we found when we had the site surveyed. Otherwise, we originally adopted it for 111 units in 3 stories over a 1 building. This is a lot of different homes. The other issue was the church owns a small piece at the south edge of those homes. I know they had contacted us to see if you all wanted to buy it as well. Yeah, that's awfully.
We have met with them many a times.
And
with no
anyway, it's just another.
luck Because it's tied up in the archdiocese.
Oh, okay.
We were willing to do a lot for them, but
It's still
complicated on their part.
on their part. Okay, just as a
We were gonna buy it as a buffer.
Yeah, exactly. Cool idea. Anyway, in favor, just wanted to ask the question about whether or not because I happen to know the property, I have to worked on it with the rezoning and the PUD, et cetera. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Is there anyone who would like to speak other than in favor of this project? Please come forward and tell us your name and address. Is there any need for further discussion? Do I have a motion regarding this application?
I'll make a motion to approve item 25, this is 109.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Okay. The motion passes, and the application is recommended for approval and will be heard by the city's mayor and council at their legislative meeting on Thursday, April 3rd, and then voted upon by them at their meeting on the following Monday, April 7th. Thank you, sir. All right. Are there any staff reports?
No.
Okay. If there is no further business, I make a motion that we adjourn.